Hi everyone, welcome and thanks for joining us for this last session. We're going to take the application that we've been building and we're going to integrate HockeyApp into it. But before we get to that, just a quick introduction. My name's Kym Phillpotts and I'm one of the instructors at Xamarin University. And if you don't know what Xamarin University is, it's the place to go for the most comprehensive and up-to-date Xamarin-focused training available anywhere. Xamarin University offers live online training by experienced instructors. You can learn everything from the basics of building a Xamarin application right through to advanced architecture topics and techniques. And as a Xamarin University student, you also get access to one-on-one sessions with instructors to discuss development concepts, strategies, or even perform code reviews. We have an amazing Xamarin community with a private forum just for Xamarin University students and instructors. You also have the opportunity to become a Xamarin certified mobile developer, which is quickly becoming a benchmark certification. So if you'd like to learn more or enroll in Xamarin University, please visit us at university.xamarin.com. But let's start off by talking at a high level of what HockeyApp is, and then we'll get into integrating it into our application. Essentially, HockeyApp brings mobile DevOps to your app with beta distribution, crash reporting, user metrics, feedback, and a powerful workflow integration. First of all, HockeyApp has powerful distribution capabilities that allow you to upload applications to the portal, and then testers can go and download and install your applications. You can invite individuals to use your application, set up teams for testing, or even distribute to the enterprise. And by integrating the open source HockeyApp SDK into your application, you can get rich insights into how your application is being used, track crash reports, and receive feedback from your users. So distributing your application can be a challenge. Using the HockeyApp portal, it's dead simple to upload a build. You can upload the actual build as well as the symbolication information, so you can get useful stack trace information about any crashes that occur. And of course, you can also integrate the uploads of your builds into your favorite continuous integration pipeline as well. Then you can invite individuals and teams to go test your application. And HockeyApp even has an inbuilt tool for recruiting new testers. And then once your testers sign on, they're going to be notified to install your application. Then they can go and install it right there on their device and start using it. You can also use the HockeyApp portal to understand your users' behavior to improve your application. You can track app adoption rates through daily active users, monthly active users, and net new users, as well as measure customer engagement through session count, and you can verify your app's reliability day by day with crash-free users. Now, getting feedback from your users is critical as well. You can use the feedback feature for all builds of your application or just for the beta versions. Either way, HockeyApp makes it easy for users to tell you what they like and what they don't like. It lets them create support requests, file bugs, or post ideas right from within your application. And then you can go and act on and answer feedback directly from the HockeyApp backend. And of course, HockeyApp is supported on all the platforms you care about: iOS, tvOS, macOS, Android devices, Windows 10, UWP applications, Windows 8, and Windows Phone. But let's jump straight in and see how we integrate HockeyApp into our application. We'll start with the HockeyApp portal. And the first thing you need to do is go and create yourself an application. And because this is a Xamarin Forms project and we produce apps for different platforms, you want to have different apps for each of those platforms. So let's start off with the iOS one. So to create an application, all you need to do is come up here and click the New App button on your dashboard. Now, if you've already created a build for your application, you can get started by just dragging and dropping your bundled app right here into this dialog. But if you haven't got your build yet, you can go ahead and you can click the link at the bottom to manually go and create your application. So now you can create your application, and remember, you want to create an app for each of your platforms. And when you're creating your app manually, you just need to specify the platform, the release type. So in our case, we'll select beta. You want to give it a meaningful title. So we'll make that something like exam.ios. You'll also want to put your bundle identifier here, which you have set up in your info.plist file. So in our case, it's going to be com.yourcompany.exam. You want to select your account if you have multiple accounts, and then you can go ahead and hit the save button. This will go and create your application for you. So now your app is set up. You have the application overview page. This is where you'll manage your application. And probably the most important thing here is this app ID that we have here. So that's what we're going to use to integrate HockeyApp into our application. But you'll see across the top bar, you can have a look at, the versions of your application. You can have a look at crash logs for your application. Eventually, we'll put some events in here, any user feedback that you might have, and as well, you can actually go and see the users who are actually registered to use your application. So this is basically where, when you've got an application you want to share with the world, you can start inviting users or adding teams in here. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on when we talk about distribution. But for now, let's go and integrate HockeyApp into our iOS application. The first thing you want to do is you want to add the HockeyApp Xamarin NuGet package into all of your different projects. So we'll go up to the solution here, we'll say manage NuGet packages, and what we're after here is the Hockey SDK. So we go and select that. We want to select all of our projects and then hit the install button. That'll go away and basically install the Hockey SDK. Now that's done, we need to add a little bit of code into our app delegate over in our iOS project. But the first thing I like to do, I actually like to store my app IDs in a central location. So I'll put those in a portable class library. So I'll create myself a folder under here called services, for example. And inside of that, I'll put myself a HockeyApp helper class, essentially. So I'll call this HockeyApp helper. And this is basically where I'm going to put my my keys and my various other things. So I'll make this a public static class. And as well as that, I'll actually put a nested class in here for the keys or for the app IDs. So I'll say public static class app IDs. And then I'll put in my string here. So this is going to be the string for my iOS application. Okay, and what I need to do is I need to go over to my HockeyApp portal and grab that that app ID that we have here and put that back into here. And make sure I get rid of that space. So now I've got my key in a central location. Now what I can do is I can go and look at my app delegate here, and I can basically go and put in some code in here in my finished launching to go and reference that. Okay, so what I also like to do is I'll create myself a method called initialize HockeyApp. Okay, so we'll go and generate that method downstairs, and inside of that method, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create myself a manager class. Or actually go and get a reference to the manager class. So this is in something called bit hockey manager. And I need to actually go and add in the using for that one. So it's using hockeyapp.ios. And I want the shared hockey manager. And then what I want to do is go and configure that manager. So I say manager.configure. And then I can say my HockeyApp helper. Okay, using my services dot app IDs dot HockeyApp iOS in there. Okay, so that basically brings in the key. And then what I want to do is I want to go and start that service or start that manager. Okay, so I call start manager, and also just so as it can work out which device is which, I'll say manager dot authenticator dot authenticate installation. Cool. And that's actually all I really need to do in order to integrate the SDK. So one of the most common things people want to do is log unhandled exceptions. And the good news is HockeyApp will actually do that for you. So what we'll do is we'll actually get it to generate a unhandled exception. So we'll go into our home page here, and inside of here, in our button click when we start a new test, let's just throw an exception. So let's, I don't know, throw a new, and I could just throw in an exception here, you know, oh no, for example. Or maybe we should do something that we recognize. So maybe a divide by 0 error or something like that. All right. And basically, if I run this application now and I click on a button, we should have an unhandled exception and our application will crash. So let's try that out. So now if I hit the start button, I expect to get a divide by 0 error. Okay, and I indeed get one. So I'll continue on. And of course our application crashes, but what happens now if we go and restart this application? So the next time the user goes and launches the application, they're going to be prompted with this to indicate that HockeyApp's actually caught an exception, and do we want to send that to the portal? So the user has the option to send the report, always send the report, or don't send the report. So let's say we send that report. What we'd expect is for it to now be logged in the portal. So let's go and have a look and see whether that's happened. So now if you go up to the crashes tab and have a look inside of there, hey, we can see that we actually have an exception in here. So if I click on that, click on that and have a look at it, I can view the information about this crash. So here it's going to show me the type of error. It even shows me the line number that it happened on. We get a bit of a chart of previous crashes. We can have a look at our native, our managed stack trace. We can have a look at our native trace as well. Okay. And another thing that we can do also is we can have a look at things like crash logs in here. So we can actually get some information about, what device it was on and also the actual crash logs themselves. So lots of great information in there. And so it basically just handles that for you, essentially. Now let's look at how we would add a custom event into our application that tracks when something happens. So we'll put this event in when, say, a user starts an exam. And again, I like to put my custom event messages into string constants when I can. So I'll come in here to my HockeyApp helper, and inside of here, I'll create a string constant for the event. So I'll put this under another class. So public static class, we'll say that make this events. And I'll add another string in here. So public const string, we'll make this exam started, and this will be the message we want to put in there. So say user started exam. All right, so that's what we're going to have in our custom log. Now we'll go and put this into our main page. So we'll come into our home page here, and right down the bottom here, perhaps instead of throwing this exception, let's actually track this event. So we'll say HockeyApp.metricsmanager.track event, and then I can use my constant here. So I can use HockeyApp helper. Throw that using in there. Events.exam started. So now if I go and start this, I'll just close these files down. If I start this, I should actually track an event when I go and start that exam. Let's try that out. Let's go and hit our button. And we should find that that's going to track our event over in the portal. So let's go to our portal. We'll go back to our main page here. We'll go into our application. Go under our events tab here. And sometimes it takes a moment to come through. So we can just hit refresh. And there we see we have this user started exam event has been logged to our portal. Okay, and down here we can see some information about, the event count and the users and number of unique users and the counts over time as well. So pretty cool, pretty easy to go and integrate into there. So let's go back, and we want to talk about one last thing with iOS, and that's how we can go and deploy our application or distribute our application. So we'll come back over to our application here. We'll stop that. First, there's a couple of settings you'll want to configure for your iOS application. Now, you probably want to do an ad hoc build for a release to devices. So what we can do is we can come up to the menu up here. We can change this to ad hoc. We'll want to go and select iPhone from here. And now what we want to do is we want to go and set some project properties as well. So we'll go into our project properties. And starting at the top here, the first thing you want to have a look at is in your iOS IPA options. You want to make sure that you have Build Ad Hoc Enterprise Package turned on, which it probably will be for your ad hoc iPhone builds already. And then we'll go down to our iOS application, and we want to set a version number. So we'll make this version 1. We'll give it a build number of, say, I don't know, 1.1, just so we know it's this build. Because you might have noticed earlier on when we created an event and a crash, it actually created a version 1.0 for us automatically in the portal, even though we haven't uploaded. Then what we want to do is we want to come down to the bundle signing, and within here, you want to make sure that you've got the right identity and the provisioning profile configured. Now, because it's ad hoc, you want to make sure this is a distribution ID, and that provisioning profile should have the user's devices in there. Now, I've already set up one called VS Connect Exam. You go and set all that stuff up in the Apple Developer Portal. So if you don't know how to do that, we've got some good docs over at the Xamarin site. But for getting those device IDs, HockeyApp actually helps you out. When a user goes to the HockeyApp site on their mobile, or when you get them to join and it sends them an invite, it'll actually ask them if they want to send their device ID over. So it provides a pretty convenient way of getting hold of those device IDs that you need to enter into your provisioning profile. So with those options in there, we'll close that down and we'll hit save. Now it's time to do a build, and this may take a while. So we'll come up here, we'll build our solution. And while this is going, let's go over to our HockeyApp site and configure some things there while it's building. So the first thing you probably want to do is you want to go over to your Users tab for your application. And in here, we can actually just go and directly invite a user here, or probably what you really want to do is you want to add a team. So we can go and add a team. If you have a team available, you can go and select one and just add it to our application. Otherwise, what I'll do is I'll go and manage a team and I'll create a new team. We'll call this, for example, exam testers. You can put some tags in here, so that makes it easy to find later on. So I'll put an exam in here. Also, you want to specify your account if you have multiple accounts. And what you can actually do is you can just go and add users directly into here. Now, I've already got a user which I've actually set up. So his name or her name is zamquiztester at outlook.com. Okay, and so what I can do is I can add this person in here, and we can specify a role for them as well. So we'll set that up as tester, and you can send out an invite email to all of the users that you're adding into the team, or just the new ones that you're adjusting, the new ones who aren't already enrolled into HockeyApp. We can basically set a message in here. So maybe we'll say, welcome to HockeyApp, or welcome to my app. Please enjoy testing. All right, something like that. All right, and then I go ahead and I hit save. Okay, so now I've got this team, And you'll see that it's got a couple of users in here. So it's got the exam tester and also me because I'm the owner of the account. Now what I'll do is I'll go back to my application and go into users here for my application. You can see that I'm not listed in here. So let's go and add a team, and we'll just add that team that we just created. So exam testers here, and we'll go and add those in. Okay, so then it's going to say, okay, we're adding in that team. It's got these users in it. It's got the developer, which is me, and the tester, which is our exam test user. I can send a notification if I like, and then I can basically go and hit submit. Okay, and now we have these exam testers, and we've got 2 users that have been added to exam iOS. So with that, we should be able to go, let's go see if our build's finished. And that build succeeded. So what we want to do now is we want to basically get that IPA. We want to go and upload it into HockeyApp. So to do that, where we really want to go is we want to go into the folders, because that's where it's going to drop it. So if we go open folder and file explorer, and then you'll find the IPA in your bin folder under iPhone, ad hoc, and then it'll be in a directory here. So we can see we have our exam iOS IPA here. So now what we really want to do is we want to drag that across into our HockeyApp application. So we'll come back to our, say our version information here, and we'll click add version. And then what we can do is we can go and drag and drop that IPA file onto here. So let me just go and grab that, and we'll drop it in here. And it's now going to go and upload that for me. And now that's done, what it's going to do is it's going to ask me for some release notes. So I'll just say version 1.1, please test this, I suppose. And I can hit my next step. It's going to ask me whether we allow downloads and installs of this version and whether we restrict it to particular people. I'll just leave that as it is. Hit the next button. And then it's basically who I want to send notifications to. So do I want to send notifications? Probably not at this point. So I'll go and hit done. So now if I go over to my device, and I have that set up here, and I'm just mirroring the screen, and I basically hit my refresh button. Okay, so I'm logged in to that testing account. I've got 2 open invites. So I can see I can accept being part of exam testers, and I can also come in here to the exam iOS application, and you'll see that I have version 1.1. Go and download this. I can even provide some feedback in here as well. But what I can do is I can go and hit the install button here, and it will ask me if I want to go and install that application. Basically now I can, it's going to download and install it on this device. So if I sort of go back to my home screen here, you can see it's actually installing the application as we speak. And then once that's finished, there we are. I can then go and launch our application as well. And there we have it. We've got our exam application on our device. Now we can come over here, have a look at our statistics, and we can see that we've had 1 download, and we can see what device that is and what user that is as well. So, so pretty cool. With that, we've now created our application, added some crash logging, added custom events, and distributed it out as well. Now let's turn our attention to how we integrate our Android application. So as before, the first thing we want to do is go over to our HockeyApp portal, and we want to go and create a new application. So I'll come into the main page, hit new application, and I'll click the manual button down the bottom here. So we want to select an Android application. We'll give it a title, like exam.droid. We'll give it a package name, which is our com.yourcompany.exam. And we specify our account here as well. And then we go ahead and hit save. This will create your application. And again, the important thing is this app key that we want here. So I'll just copy that to our clipboard and we'll come back over to Visual Studio here. And what we want to do now is we basically want to put that app key into our helper file. So we'll come in here and we'll say public const string HockeyApp ID for our droid, and we'll paste that string into here and get rid of that space. Now we want to add some initialization code to our Android platform, very similar to what we did in the iOS project. So I'll close this down. Come over to my Android project, into my main activity. It's recommended that you add in an assembly reference up here in order to put your key in. That makes it a little bit easier. So we'll say assembly, and we want some metadata in here. And the key that we want here is net.hockeyapp.android.app identifier, and we'll give that a value, which is going to be our HockeyApp helper dot app IDs and our droid. Now we'll add some code into our onCreate here. Again, we'll create a method here for initialize HockeyApp. And then we'll register the crash manager. So we'll have to add a namespace here. We want to add the using HockeyApp Android. We'll go and register. And because we've given our key up earlier on, we can just give our context here. Now we'll register the metrics manager. Again, you want to add a namespace in here for hockeyapp.android.metrics. Register this. And it wants our application. And we're done. The custom event that we raised earlier on when we clicked on the start button has already been implemented. So we're pretty much good to deploy now. First of all, let's set our Android, make sure that's our startup project. We'll select a release build out of here. And as well as that, I probably want to check the project properties just to make sure I've got version numbers correctly. So you can see that I've got my package name. We've got version number 1.1. That'll be good for us. So now what I want to do is just close that down. We'll just save that file. And now we want to archive our application. So we can do this from up in our build menu. You'll see that there's a menu option here for archive. So that will create an archive. Now, if you're not sure about this process, we've got some great docs over at the Zaman University site. But basically we come in here, we select archive. It's just packaging that up for us. And you can see it's created an archive for our version 1.1. Now what we want to do is we want to click on this distribute button because we want to sign our application. So you want to select your key store and then you can go save as. And then we'll put this into a directory, say C:/archive, for example, and go ahead and save that. It'll ask for our password. And then we're pretty much good to go. So now we can go and upload it. So now it's just a matter of dropping that onto our HockeyApp site. So let's go to that directory. And inside of here, we've got our archive file. If we come over to our page here, we can basically just grab that and drop it on here. And that's going to go and upload our APK. Give it a bit of processing time. Give ourselves some release notes. So maybe help test my Android version. Go to our next step. We can say, yes, we want to install it. We don't want to restrict downloads. And then, we could send some notifications as well. I'll choose not to do that at the moment. Okay, and we're done. Now, one thing I did forget to do was actually to add the team in here. So what I should do is I should come into here. I'll go into my users. We'll go and add a team here. So I'll add my exam testers. And so therefore it'll give me my exam test user. So we should be good to go. So now if I grab myself an Android device, we should be able to go and download that and install it. Now what I like to use is I like to use a little application called Visor. It's really great for sharing out your for sharing out your Android devices. Now, one setting that your users will have to make to install the application is if we come into Settings, down in Security, there's a setting here to allow unknown sources. So you want to make sure that that is turned on. Okay, now what we can do is if I switch across to my HockeyApp page here, you can see that I'm already logged in as exam test user, and you can see that I have my exam droid here. So if I go and select that, we can see we have our new version available here, and I can go and hit the download button. So what that'll do is it'll download it. We can see that that's downloading there. And in just a moment, that will be finished. Let's have a look. Okay, so the download's complete. If I go and tap on that, it'll take me to my downloads. I go and select that, and it'll ask me if I want to install the application, which I do. Okay, the app's installed, and I can go ahead and I can open that application. And there we have it. We have our application installed. Now, if I hit Start Exam here, it's going to start the exam. And if you recall, we put in that custom event. So now I could probably go back to my portal and see that custom event having come in. So we'll go back to that portal. We'll go and have a look at our Android application. Click on our events here. It might just take a little while to come through, so I'll go ahead and hit refresh. And there we have it. We've distributed our application, run it, and sent through some event logic. Fantastic. So let's come back to our project again. Shut down a few windows here. Now let's cover off the UWP application. The first thing we want to do is go over to our portal, create a new application, just like we did before. This one will be a Windows application. Our title is going to be exam.uwp and our bundle identifier the same. Go and create that. We'll go and add a team into here as well. Now we'll take this app ID and let's go integrate it into our application. First, let's put that in our HockeyApp helper class here. Close that down. Now with our UWP application, it requires a different NuGet package. So I'll come into here and say manage NuGet packages. The package we're looking for is called hockeysdk.uwp. So we'll grab that and install it. Now let's add some configuration code into our app XAML CS file. Come into this file here, and we want to add a little bit of code into our app initializer here, but we probably want to add a few usings first of all. We want to add Microsoft.HockeyApp, and we'll also add our service in as well. Now we can come down to here and we want to say hockeyapp.current.configure, and this is our HockeyApp app IDs dot HockeyApp ID UWP. Actually, this wants to be Hockey Client. I don't know what's happened to my IntelliSense. Okay, I think that's okay. Let's close that down. There's also a slight complication in UWP because we need to use a platform-specific methods to go and track our events. And this means we're going to need some mechanism to call down to the platform. What we want to do is some refactoring here. Now, first one, what I'll do is I'll come up here and I'm going to introduce an interface here. I'm going to call this iHockey event service. And this interface is basically going to be used to provide an abstraction over our platform specific service here. So I'm going to create a method called track event. So just like we saw before. Then I'm going to create a class within my UWP application which implements that interface. I'll call this Hockey Track or HockeyApp Event Service UWP. We'll make this class inherit our interface. Make this a public class. And here I want to call the platform specific code. So that's going to be Microsoft.HockeyApp.HockeyClient.current.trackEvent and the event name. I also want to call this from my dependency service. So we'll add an assembly reference up the top to register it. Now let's create a method on our HockeyApp helper, which is actually going to call this. This method's going to be our public static void. This is going to be our track event. And inside this method, depending on our platform, we'll either call to the metrics manager as we did before, or we'll use a dependency service to call down to Windows. So I'll just say if device.os is Windows, we'll call that dependency service. We'll use the dependency service to get our implementation. And call that track event method, passing it the event name. Otherwise, we'll use the metrics manager. So now if you're running on Windows, it'll use the dependency service to call down to the UWP track event. Otherwise, it'll use the Xamarin version. And now what we want to do is we want to change our call in our homepage to actually go and use that. Come into this page here, and we'll change that to be our HockeyApp helper dot track event. Okay. So now we're good to deploy. On Windows, what we need to do is we need to actually create a package here. So you can come down to right click on the project, go down to store, hit create app package. We're not building for the store, so we'll just select no. Then we basically provide our output location, our version number, and you'll see that it's making a release build here. Click on create to do that build. Once that's done, if you want, you can run the Windows App Certification Kit, but we don't need to. In fact, what we can do is just go and have a look at our output directory here. Inside of here, it's got our AppX inside of here. What we want to do is we want to zip all of that up. And then drag that onto our portal. Okay, so that's finished. I can put in some notes. Please help me test my UWP app. Allow installations. I won't bother with notifications. And we've got our application now. So now it's available for anyone to use. What I'll do is I'll log in as a different user and we'll see if it's available and try downloading it as well. I'll just come and log in as my exam quiz tester. And we can see we have a UWP application available here. If I go ahead and download that and save it. Okay, so there it is downloaded. Now what I want to do is I want to extract that. As a user, that's what I do. I'll extract it. And inside of this, there'll be a PowerShell script, which I want to go ahead and run. And it says my app was successfully installed. And now if I go to my start menu, I should see under here, I have my exam UWP application downloaded and ready to go. So there you have it. So far, we've looked at HockeyApp, which is Microsoft's full platform for managing your tests deployments to your users. But if you've been following the tech news over the past few days, then you might know that there's a new player in town, and that's Visual Studio Mobile Center. Mobile Center is a consolidated platform that combines many of our mobile services into a single unified portal. And from that single portal, you're able to configure your CI builds, which automatically pull from your source control system, deploy your apps to your testers' devices, get reports on usage and other useful analytics, and receive crash reports when your applications encounter something unexpected. In addition, you'll be able to configure basic Azure mobile services here, such as easy tables, and get your UI tests from Test Cloud, all in one unified portal. A public preview of the portal is live now at mobile.azure.com. So as a last stop in our mobile development training, let's dive a little into this and see how we can configure our apps to utilize the services that we have available. To start with, the preview is currently oriented around the two most popular mobile platforms, so that's iOS and Android. You can build your application in almost any available technology. So we've got SDKs available today that integrate with native APIs using Swift, Objective-C, and Java. And there's also managed libraries for your Xamarin applications. Now do keep in mind this is a preview, so not all of the features available in the cloud services we've looked at today are exposed in Mobile Center. So if you've got specific requirements that are not available yet, then you can revert to the segregated services we've explored over the course of the training today. So for example, if you have a UWP app, then you can use HockeyApp, just as I've shown you today, to actually go and collect your analytics reports. But you can expect to see more features getting integrated into Mobile Center. So let's have a look at how we go and add an application. Registering a new application is quite simple. First, log into Visual Studio Mobile Center using your credentials. You can use your GitHub account. That has the advantage of being able to associate your existing repository as apps, which can be built when you make changes to your source code. You can also use your Microsoft account. This would be the same account you use to log into other Microsoft services like Azure or Office 365. And then once you're logged in, you can go and add a new application. It'll ask you for some basic information and you'll be able to choose the mobile platform that your application is built on. When you complete this form, it'll drop you into the Getting Started page, which gives you the necessary code to actually integrate into your application. And the most important piece of code is the application key, which we have highlighted on the slide here. So this is a unique identifier which represents your application in Mobile Center. Now, applications are owned by the specific logged in account. However, you can go and add other collaborators to your application through email invites once your application's been created in the portal. And so now that we have a key in hand, we just need to add a little bit of code to our application. And as mentioned earlier, there's several SDKs available depending on what language your application is written in. So Swift, Objective-C, Java, React, or C#. So for Xamarin applications, the SDK is shipped as NuGet packages, and there's two packages you'll want to consider adding to your application. The first one is microsoft.azure.mobile.analytics. That adds support to report events and stats from your application as it runs out in the world. The second is microsoft.azure.mobile.crashes. This adds the support to catch unhandled exceptions and report them up to Mobile Center so you know when your users encounter issues with your application. These both depend on a core package which will automatically be added when you include either of them. And you can choose to use either or both of them together depending on your reporting needs. And once we have the SDKs installed, depending on your platform target, we have just a little code to add. Do keep in mind that this is the code for the preview, which may change over time. So do make sure you check the documentation and the Getting Started guides in Mobile Center to get the most up-to-date information. Okay, let's start with a native UI Xamarin application. If your app is a Xamarin iOS application, then you need to add a call to mobilecenter.start to initialize the library and connect to Mobile Center. That should be done in your app delegate's finish launching method, as you can see here. And this method takes two parameters. The first is the app key, which identifies your application. That should always be the app key registered for your iOS application in the portal. And the second is a params list of the services you want to activate. So here we have two being passed in, analytics and crashes. As mentioned a moment ago, you can decide which services you want to use. For example, if we decided not to include crash support because we're relying on some other system for that, we just could omit this type of crashes from the call and not pass it in as a parameter. Over in Android, it's very similar. In fact, the code you need to add is identical except for the app ID. And as with iOS, we need to place this in our startup code. So a good place is in your main activities on create method. And of course, you notice that the app key is different from our iOS version, and that's because this is a different application. So each application and platform is given a unique key for tracking purposes. And that brings us to Xamarin Forms, which we've been using today. You can actually use the same initialization code I just showed you, where we placed it into each platform-specific project. However, there is an alternative approach available specifically for Xamarin Forms, where we break the initialization into two steps. The first part is done in your shared code. Now here we've placed it into our application's singleton code as part of our constructor. It's again a call to start, but notice that we don't supply an app key in this version. We simply register the services we want to use. So this allows us to write the code once, and all our Forms implementations will register these modules for our application. The second part is done in our platform-specific projects. And remember, the app key is platform-specific, so we need to add code in both our platform-specific projects to go and register that app key. This is done with a different method on the Mobile Center class named initialize that just takes the app key as a sole parameter. Using this two-method initialization allows us to isolate only what is really platform-specific. But if you prefer to use the original mobilecenter.initialize, that will work equally as well. And that's all we need to do. Now when we run our application, it'll begin reporting analytics and crash jumps to Visual Studio Mobile Center, where I can go and see reports for all the users running my application. In the Mobile Center portal, analytics are shown under the Analytics section. So here you'll find the default information the Analytics module pushes into the portal. Things like session tracking, specific device properties such as OS version, model, and manufacturer. And you don't need to add any additional code to go and collect this information. It just happens automatically. And just one thing on the side I want to mention that's not shown here is if we need to go and allow the user to opt out of this collection, we can disable analytics through a static property on the analytics class called enabled. It's a Boolean that controls whether this information gets reported up to the service or not. And of course, you can also track your own custom events with specific properties to know what's happening in your application. This allows you to measure things that matter specifically to your business, track user actions, and get more detailed information about how your users are using your application. This also gets aggregated and reported up to the server. The way you do this is to call the static track event method on the analytics class. So here you can see I'm using it to report when you finished the game and what your score was. The only required parameter is the first one, so that's the string that represents the name of the event. Now the second parameter is optional, which is a dictionary of key value pairs, which represents additional bits of data that you want to track for your event. So that has to be a string to string dictionary, but the keys and values can actually be anything you need them to be. The other supported module is crashes. So once you've initialized the crashes module, it'll automatically start logging any crashes in the device's local storage. And when the user opens the application again, all pending crash logs will automatically be forwarded to Mobile Center, and you can go and analyze the crash along with the stack trace on the Mobile Center portal. Only uncaught exceptions are reported, so if you're debugging the application and hit an exception, that won't pollute the data that you find in the portal. Also, if you want to test the exception reporting, you can use a static method on the crashes class. It's called generate test crash, and you can see that's what we have here on the screen. Native and Xamarin-based iOS applications have an additional requirement. You have to upload symbols to the portal so the system can symbolicate the call stack. Having symbols allows Mobile Center to give you a full view of the crash activity, and without them, it's really hard to identify the issue, and in Swift and Objective-C applications, just about impossible. So that's the high-level overview of integrating support for Mobile Center into your applications. Do remember this is a preview today, but it is a fully functional preview that you can use in your applications alongside some of the other services we've explored over the course of the training today. So do make sure you check it out. It will eventually become your one-stop portal for all your mobile app tracking needs. Well, we've covered a significant amount of ground today. We first learned how to set up our development environment with Rob. Then Renee showed us how to create a brand new Xamarin Forms application in Visual Studio. Next, Jesse taught you the fundamentals of building a Xamarin Forms application. Jason showed us how you can integrate Azure into your application, and Glenn showed us how we can test our application. And finally, we deployed with HockeyApp and then looked at the new upcoming Visual Studio Mobile Center system and how you can add support into it for your Xamarin applications. Before we end, I just want to remind everyone about the training materials available from Xamarin University. We've got a bunch of free self-guided courses you can go through to learn and practice the basics of Xamarin mobile development. And then if you want to continue your education, you can sign up for a subscription and go through more than 80 courses with live instructors just like me who will teach you about how to build your next killer mobile application. So check it out at the URL university.xamarin.com/self-guided. Sadly, we've reached the end of our training today. But we've got several Xamarin experts and Xamarin University professors here on the Q&A chat, so if you've got any questions, then we've got some answers. So we'll stick around and interact with you. So a big thanks for watching, everyone, and let us know if you have any questions.